A very big welcome to our audience joining in virtually. We have with us today community members, both domestic and international, which is very exciting. Hi, I'm Michael Fidel, Managing Director of InsurTech Ohio, and we are proud to bring to you panel number 2 on the digital transformation of small commercial distribution. This series is brought to you in partnership between InsurTech Ohio and Ohio CPCU chapters. It is our privilege to have moderating with us today Mark Brading of Strategy Meets Action, as well as our panelists Bobby Calise of Grange Insurance and Christopher Lane of Tarmica. A reminder to our audience that our panelists will be answering your questions at the end of today's conversation. So please post to the question box on GoToMeeting and now or anytime during the conversation. Mark, Chris, and Bobby have an absolute blast. Mark, I will turn the reins over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Looking forward to today. I'm Mark Brading. I'm a partner with Strategy Meets Action. I'm part of the carrier transformation practice for Resource Pro, and I've been involved in insurance and technology for my whole career, and especially spend a lot of time thinking about the distribution space and researching what's happening in the space. So really excited for today. I was moderating the part 1 of this session with Bold Penguin and Byberg, and it was a fantastic session. So those folks set the bar high for you, Bobby and Chris. But I know from talking to you that you'll meet or exceed that as well. I'm sure we're gonna have a great time today. So I'll turn it over to you, Bobby, to introduce yourself, and then Chris.
Hi, everyone. Bobby Calise with Grange and Integrity Insurance. Excited to be here today. My background is I started my career in commercial lines underwriting. Spent a majority of my career there, primarily in small commercial, actually, a little bit of middle market. And then once the InsurTech revolution kind of hit the independent agency channel, I really took a deep interest into what is happening to our business. What does the future look like? And that's when I made the jump over from underwriting to distribution marketing side of the house. So super excited to be here today just to discuss what's going on in the market, and really excited to discuss it with Mark and Chris, because you guys are both rock stars in our industry.
Thanks, Bobby. Chris Lane, Director of Sales at Tarmica. Pleasure to be here today. My background started off as a direct writer. Out of college, customer service rep for a national direct writer. Transitioned over to the agency side for a couple of years, and then went back to the carrier side as a business development rep before jumping ship over to the InsurTech side. And just like Bobby, it was exciting. You're seeing these InsurTechs pop up, and they're all doing something different. For me, it was the carrier I was working for at the time. We released a new bot product, and it didn't hit the ground running. And when I saw what the abilities that Tarmica had, it was kind of a match made in heaven. So been here for 2 years now. Happy to say I was the first hire for Tarmica, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. So we're going to have a number of polls today and some perspectives from Bobby and Chris, and then we'll have a panel discussion as well. And so it's time for the very first poll. And I need to remind you that if you're looking for Ohio CPCU or CE credits, it's important that you participate in all of the polls that we have during this session. So the first question is, how important is the evolution of small commercial insurance to you? Is it extremely important to your business, somewhat important? You're still learning about the space, or not sure, or other? So it's going to be interesting to see the results here. I'm assuming most of you who are attending, at least have some reasonable degree of interest in the space, or you wouldn't be here joining us today. I think personally, I think there is an absolute revolution going on in small commercial space, especially for distribution, like we're talking about today. There's just so many exciting things happening. I think it's a win-win for everybody. It's good for customers, it's good for distributors, it's good for carriers, MGAs, everybody in the landscape. So there's no surprise. 64% say extremely important to my business, and many of the rest say somewhat important, and not unusual that some are still learning about the space. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn over to Bobby. Let's hear Bobby's perspective on the state of small commercial from a carrier standpoint.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So if you think about changing consumer expectations, right, we all want on-demand stuff. We want things to be done immediately, and that's translating into small commercial and even our agents' expectations around how they do business with carriers. And so aspirationally, I think all of us really want to be a point where we can just plug and play, easily connect into whatever technology partners our independent agencies choose. And in the past, we've kind of had a P&C industry where it's been very carrier centric, right? We build this technology, we expect our agents to come to us to engage, whether that's through a rating portal, whether that's through a policyholder portal. And what we're seeing is this evolution to where it's becoming a lot more agency centric and a lot more policyholder centric, where our agents and our policyholders really want carriers to plug into whatever technology stacks they're building or whatever technologies they're using versus having to come to us. And realistically, it's truly a journey for carriers, right? It's going to be incremental. We really need to focus on taking a balanced approach. And I like to think about it in three kind of buckets of digital capabilities, right? So there's the capabilities that our agents need us as carriers to invest in, and they're investing in these technologies, so we need to be there. There's also digital capabilities where carriers just need to develop. They know it's foundational. We need to develop things such as core system modernizations, which I've lived through a couple of those in my career, and there's a lot of carriers going through that, and that's always something that's a hurdle for carriers, right? Digital marketing, how do we engage with our policyholders through our independent agency channel to bring in those leads and connect with them. CRM sophistication, how do we integrate all of that? And then lastly, like that API maturity model, right? So in the small commercial space, working with Tarmica, for Grange, that's our very first API integration for small commercial. And so how do we get better at that? And how do we leverage the tools that we're investing in? And then lastly, at least at Grange, we have our innovation team, and they're really trying to explore what are those digital capabilities over the horizon that we probably don't know that we need yet, but we're going to need in the future, and how can we leverage those as differentiators? And really all of this comes down to small commercial has a really thin margin, and how do we reduce that friction in that process to make it more efficient and effective in really bringing in those leads and writing new business in the small commercial space.
Bobby, I really like the way you opened this up because I think it set the stage when you talked about how the industry has been carrier centric and it's now evolved or evolving to agency centric and policyholder centric. To me, I think that describes the big picture or over time transformation that's underway, right? Because you're right. In the past, the philosophy has been kind of, if you build it, they will come, right? And that's no longer the case. I'd also just like to mention that, when you talk about innovation and what digital capabilities are coming over the horizon, I'm going to hold that because I think the three of us towards the end, we're going to talk about the future of small commercial distribution, and maybe we'll explore some of those topics a little bit more as well. But I think your three buckets really are perfect, right? Because understanding the technology that carriers need to provide to distribution partners, and then the digital capabilities inside the enterprise to support that, and then innovation to drive towards the future. I think that sets the stage really nicely as well. So I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and maybe you can give us some commentary on what you think about digital platforms and how digital platforms play in the small commercial space today.
Yeah, kind of like what we were saying earlier, part of my job lately has been dealing with both, agents and carriers. So I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds here, and it's really interesting to see, like what Bobby mentioned, kind of the digital, I call it the evolution of an insurance company. So we've partnered with close to 27 carriers now, and each one is on that different journey, whether it be coming through a back-end digital transformation, they're now in the front end part of it, the agent-facing platform. And for us, we've really tried to adapt to every single carrier. So we have carriers that are doing, unique things that others aren't doing, and we're trying to, evolve with them. So we've never really put, kind of the one way of doing business, because we've realized that every carrier is different along the path. And, each carrier is going after a different subset of business. They may have some, niche programs that they're trying to, create a digital storefront or a digital agency, digital platform for one specific industry type or class code. So we've been trying to adapt to that. And, like I said, it's been interesting to see how each company goes about, their digital transformation, and we're really happy to be a part of it. So that's kind of, where I see it from a carrier standpoint. From the agent standpoint, it's been pretty neat to see some small agencies in rural towns adopting technology. You have your big national insurance brokers, your top 100 agencies that are consistently utilizing technology or looking for new technologies, and it's all about, speeding up that process for small business. So, we've been happy to be with them on that journey, and continue to evolve our process too. We're not set in our ways. We're always looking for new ways to create, new question sets or new UI. How do we clean up our UI to make it even cleaner than it already is? And it's pretty simple now, but like I said, each carrier, each agent has feedback, and we take that to heart, and we try to improve our process to make it a little bit better.
I think there's so many opportunities for growth for carriers, right, and their distribution partners, and you spoke about that, and it's really interesting to think about, when you talk about how every carrier is on a different journey, right, and we observed that as well, right? So digital transformation, obviously, it's not just digital for digital's sake, right? There's a purpose, and a lot of it is about growth. So I guess the question I would have for you, Chris, is you started to talk about maybe how they focus on some different segments, or they're looking at just these class codes for different. What are some of the kind of models you're seeing for different carriers as they're trying to grow?
Yeah, so I think one of the big kind of hot button, industry terms right now is embedded insurance, right, or the on-demand insurance. So, I think like any digital platform, would be foolish not to explore it, right? So carriers looking to explore it, the digital platforms are, we're looking at it, just like a bunch of others are. But I think it's, looking for the class codes that, carriers can utilize data for. So how much data are they collecting on a daily basis, a monthly, yearly basis of these quick pass-through type classifications? So pizza shop, electrician, how much data are you collecting over the course of a year that you can start to use automation to say, all right, an electrician in Iowa, the BPP is probably $20,000, payroll is X. How can we start automating that from a carrier perspective, or utilizing Tark or any other digital platform to have a higher pass-through rate, to really make that almost insurance on demand type thing, or utilizing embedded through trade associations, third-party websites. How do you integrate the technology into it, but still having the benefit to the carrier? And what we've explored, focused on is how do we utilize an independent agent in that? So how can we utilize an agent's technology or our technology to either pass that through to an agent, or pass that over through to maybe a carrier service center, and really help speed up the flow for an independent agent?
Yeah, and probably one of the most common questions I get from carriers is, how many of these distribution platform players should we partner with? And Chris, you may not like my answer, but I usually say,
Yep.
well, it's probably not one, right? Because it depends on what segments you're trying to reach and how you're trying to reach them, right? Is it small? Is it middle market? Is it high net worth? Is it specialty? I mean, and there's, what region, what states are you talking about? So,
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot of room. It's a big pie. There's a lot of room for a lot of players, and I expect a lot of the different platforms to survive and thrive.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you always need competition because, I mean, if you're the only, dog in the ring here, your product's gonna get stale. So, I mean, you need competition. You need to, be on your best footing to adapt to either, what others are doing or what your agents are asking you for, or your carriers. So it's, we always have welcomed competition, and it's nice to see that there's other platforms out there. We certainly weren't the first. I mean, there's been iterations of small commercial rating, back 10, 12 years ago, using robotic processing, and we've taken the approach of just being strictly API, because it's, it's faster for agents. It's a better integration for the carrier too. And a lot of carriers have APIs now. Some may not know they have one, but it is there, if they went through that digital transformation. So it's been, we welcome the competition, and it only keeps us on our game.
Okay, great. I think it's time for our second poll. And the second poll is, the question is, has the digitization of small commercial insurance proven to you to have a significantly profitable impact, a somewhat profitable impact, no impact, or you're unsure, or other? And this is a really interesting question. I think it's a really important question for the industry. And I think the answer to this is going to be different than it might have been, say, 2 or 3 years ago, because, and granted, we still are in the early stages of this evolution, and there's a huge runway ahead of all of us for leveraging platforms and digitizing small commercial in general. But if we would have asked this question 2 or 3 years ago, I would have expected a lot would say no impact, right, or just early days. So I'm really interested to see, now that I've given you, kind of tipped my hand on where I think the results are going to be. I'm interested to see how they show up here. But I think, when you look kind of over time, there we go. And that's probably what I would have expected. We're starting to see it having a profitable impact, right? In some cases significant. I'm actually surprised that there are that many that say that it's been very significant. But again, if we take this same poll next year or the year after, we're going to start to see more and more of a significant financial impact on the industry by digitizing small commercial. All right, so at this point, it's time to move on to our panel discussion. And the first question we have here is, what user experiences are inherently improved by moving the buying process for small commercial insurance onto a digital platform? So I'll just throw it wide open first, and Chris, ask you to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, so from what we've seen, having the ability for agents to, kind of have that college application, right? That general college application, you're entering the information once. The nice thing about our platform, it's with an agent's appointed carriers. So we're just a tech company. We're not providing market access to anybody. This is with your core group of carriers. And, we partnered with companies like Grange and some other regionals because we knew the impact that they have on independent agents. A lot of independent agents got their first appointment from a regional or a mutual carrier. So there's a lot of loyalty to those folks, and we wanted to make sure that we, went after those guys just as much as the nationals. But what we've seen is pretty interesting. The regional carriers get a lot of quotes through our platform. The nationals do as well. And the one question that comes up a lot when we talk to carriers is, is this commoditizing small commercial, like, the opinion on personal lines? One interesting stat that we have is 18.4% of the quotes that come through our platform go to the lowest premium. And that's data we get back from the carriers on a monthly basis. So, a lot of it isn't that commoditization on it. It's still, you're working with your underwriter, you're working with the carrier, the marketing rep. There's still that interaction between the carrier and the user on the Tarmika platform. So, it provides that ease of doing business, but you're still kind of maintaining that relationship with the carrier, being a little bit quicker to market to your clients, not taking 8 minutes per carrier quote and you're going to 3. You're spending, on average, 3 to 4 minutes doing, in some cases, a bindable quote for a handful of our carriers, and you can get that back to the client in much quicker time. It's been a cool evolution to see, but at the forefront, it's still on the agent being able to do more in less time and try to improve that profitability.
Great points, Chris. And I like your 18.4% statistic there. And what it tells me is that, it really is a disservice to think about these distribution platforms as comparative raters, right? And certainly that's part of what the platforms do. But, people have this notion of what a comparative rater is, and it's all about price, right? It's basically all about price. But platforms like yours and others do so much more than that, right? It really is a broad platform with different, a set of functional capabilities that support the agent and enable the whole streamlining of the process, right?
And just to point too, we're still in the kind of that early stages still. We've been around for 3 years, and there's a few others that have been around for about the same amount of time. But it's still dependent on the carrier to expand their API, and as it matures, then you can start seeing different things like you would see on the personal lines rating platforms where, they may be including a paid in full discount, a low mileage discount. We're not there yet. And I don't think the carriers are there yet either with, providing IRPM credits or factors into the quoting. We've seen some that are applying stretch endorsements or broadening endorsements in their API for certain classifications, which is great. But the nice thing about ours is we're keeping it pretty basic. We're keeping it general. Everybody's on a level playing field. Just it's dependent on your rate. But one thing that we've always tried to educate our agents that are using our platform on is knowing your carriers too. So knowing what their appetite is, knowing what the endorsements are. So you are really formulating your quote to say, all right, well, X carrier's $500 more, but this is a landscaper who plows in the winter. Does this carrier that's the lowest premium have a snow plow endorsement? So it's understanding your carriers as well as, having that simplicity to rate the policy.
So Bobby, what are you hearing from your agents, right? What are they saying about the user experience and about working in this mode?
Yeah, so, I think first off, you talked a little bit, Mark, about, having Tarmika is not a small comparative rater, right? Small commercial comparative rater. And like we'd be kidding ourselves if carriers didn't think that CSRs were coding at least 3 carriers on every single risk that they're looking at, right? So this is just a way for the CSRs and the producers and our agents to become more efficient and effective at their jobs. I think one of the biggest pieces of efficiency that I'm seeing, and some of the synergies too that Chris and Raghav have been doing at Tarmika, is really trying to also leverage some of the other insurtechs that are in the marketplace that have complementary capabilities to Tarmika, and seeing how all of that comes together. Our agents, let's talk about appetite for a second, right? Like our agents really want to know what's your appetite before they quote. We have an appetite API integration with Ask Kodiak, and Tarmika works with Ask Kodiak. So all of those things are starting to come together into this kind of ecosystem where our agents are starting to build their technology stacks around, what capabilities can they take advantage of through multiple insurtech partners, right? And so I think as we start to become more mature within the small commercial space and the APIs, I think we'll only continue to see that happen, where we're taking advantage of all of these synergies across these different platforms that are out there. But I think at this point in time, the biggest piece that's going to drive that market is the data. So our agents are talking about the new insights that they're getting from working with Atarmica or some other insurtechs, and how is that going to change the strategic decisions they're making on what classes of business do they go after? How are they going to get their customers? What does that acquisition look like moving forward? This is opening up a completely new world. And to Chris's point, I think some of our most forward-thinking agencies are thinking about how do they take advantage of some of those adjacent shopping journeys, whether that's in mortgage origination, new car purchases, whatever that might be, and really start to think about, policyholders want to self-service when they want to, and they want to have a trusted advisor when they want to ask questions. And how do we balance that appropriately as an industry, like 24/7 access to information, but also access to the agents. So we're working really hard with folks that like Tarmica and some other insurtechs on how do we make sure that we are enabling our agents to be successful and building these things together, it's been a ton of fun.
So you just opened up the question about policyholders, right? About how does this really affect policyholders in the way that they work with agents, and you started to talk about that a little bit, but let's explore that a little bit more. Any other thoughts on what for the small business owner, what does this mean that the agents they might be working with have a distribution platform partner like Tarmica?
Yeah, I think the number one opportunity that this brings to the marketplace is for independent agents to start to capture an online shopper and compete with the direct-to-consumer type of carriers, right? So even if you think about the Tarmica platform and being able to white label that into some sort of online shopping experience and integrate that with a really good digital marketing acquisition type of tool, you could start to pull in customers very intentionally and surgically on who do you want to write, what type of carrier do you want to grow with. To Chris's point, are there niches or programs, right, that you really want to harvest those customers and go after them through digital marketing and this online shopping platform, but then also connects them to an independent agency to close the deal, to ask questions, to help them understand the coverage differences. And that to me right now, based on the maturity of where we are, is the number one impact that it could have on policyholders.
Yeah, what's really interesting is I like to think of it in terms of what I call digital on-ramps, right? So, customers, they're involved in all kinds of digital connections, right? And they have trusted partners in different spaces. And so, Chris, I guess the question to you is, are you guys looking at partnering with any, how do you engage with different other digital partners out there, to bring people in?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to stay, agent centric on that. So utilizing some of the new CRMs that are out there for agents that have developed that digital marketplace, so things are going into an agency Zoom or a better agency, and it's speeding up that transition too into Tarmica. So we have direct integrations to those folks where, lead comes in, it goes into their CRM and can be exported quickly into Tarmica. Utilizing the digital storefronts of a carrier, and how do we customize that, kind of like what Bobby said, to those niches and programs. How can we white label the Tarmica program, to arborists or, whatever, to expedite that process. But then, again, like Bobby said, having those different insurtechs that we've connected with, to have it start running through kind of one ecosystem and having those connection points. For us, not so much on the external marketing, but it's how does the agent utilize it from their internal marketing? How do we become a part of that?
Yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities for partnering, right? And
yeah.
If anything, like being an intermediary platform, you're in a position to enable that, right? To encourage that kind of partnering to take place, right?
Yeah.
Still agent centric, right? But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll talk to anybody, and because there's always a way, or there's always good things, good ideas that come out of some of those brainstorming sessions on that introductory meeting. We talked to a company the other day, and it wasn't a natural fit, just from their process. But, you know, we pulled out a couple items that, hey, you know what, maybe in 6 months we can collaborate on this and see if it does provide some value. You know, there's so many smart people out there that have great insurance minds, whether it be from, you know, the carrier side, the agency side, that we're only going to help the independent agent channel if we work together and continue on its, you know, its presence in the industry. So, I mean, you know, you look at a lot of different states, excluding Massachusetts, where I am, where it's still pretty much independent agent controlled. You know, you look anywhere else in the country, it's kind of a third between directs, captives, independent agent channel. And if we can help grow that, you know, to get a little bit bigger piece of the pie for the independent agent channel, then we're all in, you know, whether it be collaborating or, you know, doing whatever we can to improve, you know, the overall relationships. We're all in on that.
Great. All right, I think it's time for another poll. Just a reminder that you need to participate in all of these polls to get your CPCU and CE credits. This question is, when I hear about a digital transformation project in insurance, I most often feel excited about the investment and its value, interested, but the value can be hit or miss, apprehensive, not valuable for my needs, or unsure, and others, right? And, you know, if there's one theme, I think, that I see across P&C insurance, it's digital transformation, right? Virtually every single company has a pretty significant digital transformation strategy and plan underway. It can mean different things to different people, but I think many in the industry have come to the conclusion or arrived at the conclusion that it's really about, you know, across the value chain being pretty comprehensive. It's not just about the front end. It's not just about, you know, core systems, but it's about people, process, technology across the whole system, right? So most people are interested, you know, but still saying that value can be hit or miss. Pretty good chunk saying they're excited about the investment, its value. But as you see, very few that are apprehensive about it or don't think that there's any value there, and some say they're not sure yet, which is fair because, you know, all the results are not in on that yet. We're in the midst of this big transformation. All right, let's move to our next question. Our next question is, how can digital platforms help drive the innovation of products in the insurance industry? So, Bobby, I'm going to throw that over to you first because you talked about how one of the three buckets that you see in this space is around innovation. So, how can it help drive product innovation?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about where we are today, we're really in the infancy stages around small commercial digitization. Can't get that word out this morning. But, you know, the next step really is scaling and then testing and learning new products in the marketplace, right? Like how do we start to innovate a little bit, take it a little bit further, Mark, when you think about the new data insights that we have, where does that intersect with some of these newer partnerships that are out there? And how can we start to do more proof of concepts and really test those types of products within the industry and within the marketplace? You know, Grange is involved in a partnership with BrokerTech Ventures, right? So we're seeing some of the brand new startups bringing really crazy, cool ideas that sometimes it's even hard to wrap your brain around. Like, how could this actually be implemented within the marketplace? But Chris is smiling and laughing.
Yeah, sure.
But if you start to think about some of those things and back into that, you know, how can we actually get there? That's where I think, you know, if you think about products, whether that, you know, some of it's on demand, some of it's pay per mile, some of it's, you know, more customized insurance products based on the level of third-party data that we'll have, and the advancement in our underwriting predictive models. As we get more data that flows into there, I think that you'll see customers, particularly in the small commercial space, not only get a more efficient and fast quote, but an accurate quote based on the actual risk attributes that they have, versus it being this law of large numbers. But really, you know, I think the scale and the testing and learning is going to be is going to be the first steps into the innovation for products. And then how are we using that data moving forward?
Yeah, Chris, so my question to you would be, what kind of capabilities do you see in digital platforms that help to support the kinds of things that Bobby's talking about that carriers want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bobby hit the nail on the head. Utilizing and understanding the data. So, I mean, we collect data on our end. So we're looking at, where a policy is quoted, what state, what city, what is the classification quoted by the agent, and what the hit rate is. So where is the carrier, from a pricing standpoint? Are they in the lowest 10%? Are they 10% higher? We also track if an agent selected a carrier that or didn't select a carrier that was within appetite. So they wrote, a plumber, but they didn't select, whatever carrier for whatever reason. So we're tracking those types of insights too. So when we provide the information back to the carrier, it's, hey, what's going on with your plumbing program? What endorsements are you missing that other carriers may have? Finding even from a pricing standpoint. But I think it's, us providing data to these carriers is going to help them, evolve their product. How do we get more plumbers? How do we, write more in Des Moines, Iowa? Whatever we can provide the carriers, it's that two-way street of, they partner with us, and now what value can we provide to them outside of the distribution? That's been, what we've been working on a lot with carriers is just, keeping them up to date. Hey, you guys are crushing it here, but you're lacking here, and this agency quotes, predominantly this classification. So we're always trying to provide data back to the carriers to help them make better decisions moving forward. Or how do they work on relationships with, clusters, aggregators? What value can we provide them in the overall relationship?
Bobby, you mentioned on-demand insurance and some of the other innovative products that are coming out. And then there's parametric products and episodic insurance and all kinds of pay per mile and things like that. So is it possible for agents to make money on some of those kinds of things where it might be small premium?
I think it could be, Mark, if folks like carriers like Grange and platforms like Tarmica work together to make the process efficient enough to take out as much friction as we possibly can, in order for there to be a margin for agents to make money and carriers to make money, right? I see us getting there. I'm seeing more large agencies start to reinvest into their small commercial lines units because they're seeing that there are ways to make money by becoming more efficient and effective. So if we can build the right processes and put the right technology around it, I think absolutely. We just need to do it together.
100%.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if we'll get to the Uber kind of approach where, I mean, the agent's not going to make money on the first transaction, but if all the customer has to do is swipe on, swipe off, I need cyber coverage today or for this week for my business or something, that, then you're getting into multiple transactions. So I don't know how that affects the digital platforms and the data flow. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Chris.
I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting thought. I've always
Sorry,
said,
I keep throwing new stuff at you guys.
No, I mean, I've always, we've kind of always looked at it here, and I think agents should look at it this way too. I mean, if there's a will, there's a way, right? So if there's a willingness to, to try to make money on these small, quick hit micro business, quick hit, 2-day policies, then yeah, you can do it. It's what you set your mind to. And, I think, we've seen it with, or just reading industry magazines and publications, what Thimble's doing. I mean, Thimble's a good example of those quick hit, hey, I'm a photographer, I'm shooting a wedding on a Saturday, I need a quick policy. I think if you provide a service and you provide something, then, you can be successful doing it.
I mean, one thing's for sure, it's a competitive marketplace. There's a lot of innovation going on. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, to, for risks that are not covered, right? For small businesses. So to me,
Yep.
it just spells opportunity, right, in the marketplace for everybody. All right, let me move to the last question. And the last question is about the future, right? What does the future look like for digital platforms in the small commercial space? Chris, I'm going to give you kind of first shot. What's your big picture view of that?
So I mean, I think for us, for the carriers, it's all in their evolution. So what, and this all kind of ties it back in together, right? So utilizing data, utilizing teams like Grange that has the innovation team, collaborating with them. I think it's kind of an open book, right? I mean, there's so much technology, Mark, like you were just talking about with the Paradox and all that stuff. I mean, the opportunity is endless. I think it's having creative minds too, and not being afraid to throw something against the wall and see what sticks. I really think we're going to see much more of a digital ecosystem for insurance. Like I said, the data is getting better. There's more companies coming out, so there's more of these third-party data companies. You look at Plank Data or Hazard Hub or any of those folks that are focusing on property, and then look at the market for small commercial in the southeastern states with hurricane, with wind, the Gulf. There's companies that are starting to analyze that type of technology and how do we rate risk based off high risk territories. It's going to open up markets, I think, and there'll be new entrants. Again, the opportunities are endless when it comes to looking towards the future. And I'm excited to kind of see where it goes. And for regional carriers, small carriers, starting to embrace technology more than what they were before. Maybe getting away from paper app submissions and starting, having them emailed or maybe even faxed. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see the whole, evolution of insurance in the next, year, 2 years, 10 years. It's exciting.
So Bobby, it's 2030, right? What do you think small commercial distribution is going to be like in 2030?
Given the pace of change today, Mark, I don't even want to start to guess what it's going to look like. I think it's going to look completely different than what we see it as today. That's 9 years, and I think the last 18 months have been like a fast forward of 20 years in the industry. It feels like. So I don't want to guess, but what I will say is I think that the agencies and the carriers that are still around and writing small commercial in 2030 are going to be those that really focus on that concept before of reducing friction of the process, right, to get the largest margins and the quickest answer, and bring that to the table as soon as possible. And here's the thing. Our agents are getting smarter about their relationships with their carriers, right? And it was maybe 2 years ago, it was very hard for them to benchmark, carrier responsiveness time. Who is my most efficient carrier to do business with? All of that information is starting to come together very quickly. And I think agents are going to really start making decisions on which carriers do they work with in small commercial that are not only have a good product and price, but are also not causing their agency to spend more time and money internally and lose revenue on those smaller risks. So really, it's, to me, to what Chris said before, and we've kind of talked about this, it's been a theme that we pulled through this entire session, is is going to be driven by data and artificial intelligence, and that speed of technology, speed to market, and whoever can do that the fastest in the most effective way, I think is going to still be around in 2030, and those that don't might not make it.
So what do you think about the small agencies, the mom and pop agencies? Because I get concerned when we talk about, you need AI and it's all about data and analytics and things like that. What do you think those small agencies need to do to survive? Or will they survive? I don't know.
I think there's potential for them to survive if they pick their how they're going to win and what their value proposition is, and really build their digital capabilities around that. Tarmica, as an example, Chris, it is pretty affordable even for a small mom and pop agency if they want to use it. So there's not a huge barrier to entry at this point in time for an agent to invest in that. if that's where they feel that they need to, that the value proposition is going to be. Now, what I will say is a lot of agents will tell you their value prop is service, and that they out-service their competitors that are down the street. And what technology is doing is taking out that service piece of differentiator for agents, because it's that servicing piece will really be taken care of by technology. So my challenge to mom and pop agencies and smaller agencies is, what are you really going to do to bring value to your clients in the future, and your value proposition against, you know, some of the large brokers across the country.
Yeah, and you know, I would say commercial lines in general is just moving towards more and more specialization. So maybe that plays a role here, right? In terms of where agencies, whether you're large or small, right? But that also brings kind of some new dimensions to what you need to do as a digital platform player, right? You know, we're just not just pumping through the same kinds of businesses, right? There's a lot of, and maybe that's where appetite comes in, right? The appetite kinds of things. But Chris, it's just your opinion on the agencies and what they need to do and specialization, that whole topic area.
Yeah, just to kind of, you know, piggyback off what, you know, Bobby said, you know, so as a former marketing rep, you know, I worked with a lot of mom and pop agencies. Some of them were my best agents. And, you know, I know it's kind of a cliche that's been thrown around in the insurtech world and kind of the SaaS model. But, you know, some of the mom and pop agencies during COVID, you know, had to completely change and change their operation. They're working from home, they're working remotely. I think they were always maybe a little hesitant about new technology. Hey, we've been, you know, doing the same thing for 80 years. It's worked for us. We're successful. You know, why do we need to change? And you know, here comes COVID, right? So now they're working from home. They need to at least embrace a little bit of technology, right? To work remotely, set up, you know, virtual stations. And, you know, what we've seen is that agents now are more open to embracing some of this technology, like Atomica or, you know, any other digital platform out there, maybe an agency Zoom or, you know, whoever. It's definitely opened up, I think, their eyes. And that's why I do see that I think the mom and pop agencies will be successful. You know, again, if they want to put the effort into it and continue to grow their business. And, you know, having a tool like ours, partnering with a company like Grange or any other carrier on our platform is going to expedite that process so they can get the quotes out, and they're providing that, you know, top tier service. We can get your quote to you, you know, much quicker than the guy down the street. We can service your account much quicker now that we've gone through, you know, the quoting, the bind, the underwriting, all of that. You know, we can be here for you in the event you have a claim now. And Mark, I piggyback off Bobby, so I forget the original question, but I think it was something around like, you know, where do we see the digital platforms going for the, you know, for the future? And, you know, again, it comes down to carriers and how their APIs are maturing, what their innovation looks like. You know, we've seen a pretty interesting transition of companies that didn't write a traditional BOP policy. We're starting to see the traditional BOP policy come back as opposed to just writing a package policy. So I think the carriers are seeing that there is some value in this, and it can be profitable for some of that smaller, you know, micro business, maybe sub $2,500 in premium. So, you know, we are starting to see that. But I think, again, it all comes back to, you know, our willingness to work with the carriers, and then the carriers, you know, increasing their technology, increasing their innovation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that the pandemic certainly did was accelerate the whole move towards omni-channel environments, right? Everybody's trying to up their game with mobile and web and getting digital brand out there and self-service for this and that. What does that really look like for what does that mean for an agent?
Omni-channel with some agents may be a big word. I don't know. I mean, you know, I think we're getting there, and I think there's enough agencies out there, and it could be large or small, right, that are looking to, you know, create that tech stack like Bobby mentioned. You know, they're starting to say, you know, what pieces can I integrate, you know, either starting with my AMS system, How can I branch off where everything's connected? Using a rater, how does that integrate with my CRM? How does that integrate with my phone system? You know, really starting to get some education in reading publications and keeping up to date, you know, on some of the newest technology is going to benefit the agent, and start saying like, hey, I can piece this together using, you know, a Zapier or things like that. It's just being knowledgeable and kind of being a sponge when it comes to this, because there's so much out there. You know, when I talk to agents, we have our traditional sales pitch, but it's also an educational, you know, half hour, 45 minutes, you know, exploring other options. You know, here's what we do really well. Here's what, you know, oh, I did a demo with another platform. Well, they do that really well, and we won't doubt that. But, you know, we could do this, you know, just as well. So, you know, part of it's the education and just being up to date on what's in the industry, and taking it all in. Take demos. You know, if you got, you know, an hour every other day that you block off for demo calls, take them, you know, and educate yourself moving forward.
Yeah, Bobby, I mean, you at Grange, you know, you're trying to provide agents with new options for how they can communicate to you, right? So, I mean, I guess I would think of that as omni-channel. You know, what's your perspective?
Yeah, well, to piggyback off what Chris said, and going back to the reference to data, yeah, I think a single independent agency will be able to look at their data and say, like, my policyholders need a lot of handholding after, you know, after they're bound, or my policyholders don't need a lot of handholding after they're bound, and I retain pretty well, so I should really invest in the acquisition piece. And that's where I think that investment and innovation will be important to an agency based on the book of business and the type of customers that they have. Do they invest more in the integrations on the retention side and, you know, the policy servicing? Is it more on acquisition? You know, from the carrier perspective, we know that most of the time, we really need to invest in our claims experience and our billing experience, right? Because every single policyholder we have has a billing experience with us, and a lot of customers that we have a claims experience with us, right? But what does that look like on the agency side? Where do they need to make the investments based on their consumer base? And that will also drive some of the decisions we make on the carrier side on where do we need to make investments as well. So it's in this like squishy stage, I feel like, where we think we know where we need to go, but we really don't have a ton of data yet to drive those decisions. But in the meantime, we can invest in some of these foundational capabilities that we know we're going to need regardless of what the data tells us, you know, a year from now.
But it's all pretty exciting, isn't it? You know, if there were a Rip Van Winkle in insurance that woke up, you know, it was involved in small commercial 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and woke up and saw what was happening today, they probably wouldn't believe it, right? It's so different than it was.
It's crazy different. And Brent Hammer, our innovation leader at Grange, actually shared an article with me it was written by the Google Director of Engineering. And it talked about how we won't experience 100 years of change in the 20th century. We're actually going to witness like 20,000 years of progress in the next 100 years. And that's mind blowing, because even when you asked about what small commercial going to look like 10 years from now, I have no idea, because it's going to be, you know, 10,000 progress or something that's going to happen in the next 10 years. And how cool is it that we get to live through this and help our industry evolve into something more digitized and a better experience for everybody, carriers, independent agents, and policyholders alike.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. I mean, coming from the carrier side personally, onto the tech side, it's been an eye-opening experience. You know, just seeing just knowing what's available, or thinking like, hey, I wonder if we could do something like this. And it's like, oh yeah, we can, you know, utilize this third party to do this, or, oh yeah, this, you know, InsurTech does that. And it's like, where you know, when did this happen? You know, where was this, you know, 6 months ago? And now, boom, here it is. So it's awesome. You know, really excited for the future.
All right, I think it's time to see if we have any questions coming in from the audience. I'll just pass it over to Kevin and ask him if he sees anything coming in that we need to get in front of the panelists.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so a few questions have come through. One, because obviously we have such a big CPCU crowd here, always kind of the question, concern, what type of role do you see for commercial underwriters, specifically small commercial underwriters, with the rise of the digital platforms and its impact on agent relationships as well as the policy?
Bobby is a former underwriter. Yeah.
I can take this. And this is something that, I remember discussing even a decade ago when I was in an underwriting leadership chair. I do think that the role of a small commercial underwriter is going to evolve and probably pretty quickly over the next 5 years. And what I think you'll see there is more of a portfolio management type of role where you're monitoring books of business, kind of more similar to if you think about a personalized product manager, right? You're monitoring agencies, their books of business, any trends that you're seeing, how much pass through is there versus, underwriting intervention versus a risk by risk type of underwriter. I think that risk by risk type of underwriter is going to, be more of the middle market, large commercial, and the small commercial is really going to look at that at more holistically portfolio territory management type of role. Mark, Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
So one thing that we built into our platform from day one was a refer to underwriter, call to action. So, not everything in small commercials cookie cutter. You get especially, kind of looking at our distribution, coastal territories, you do a BOP and then you get a coastal decline or, a coastal referral. So we built that into our platform. Like I said, in version 1 was refer to your underwriter. So if you have something that says, hey, vacancy is 30+%, or hey, this is within 15 miles of the coast, please contact your underwriter. You can do it right from our platform. So we still want to keep the underwriter engaged as much as possible on our platform. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier is, understanding that each carrier is unique, each carrier is different. So you do still need to have that interaction with the underwriter. Maybe the quote was already reserved by another market and you think it's an error. So you can get that underwriting message, refer it to them and say, hey, Joe's Pizza Shop says it's blocked. I'm actually the agent of record and I haven't quoted it yet. So we still promote the interaction with underwriters. And when we, introduce a new carrier, we try to meet our underwriters within that company to say, hey, you may be seeing submissions come through. Here's, if you need to contact us, let us know. So even it comes down to the marketing reps too. We try to be very interactive with them as well. One, to promote our product with them, but keep them up to date on what we're doing that's new. Hey, Grange is coming out with, commercial auto or whatever. This is something that you can promote for your agents, provide that value to say, hey, we're on Tarmika, we're exposing our lines of business out here. We'd love for you to use it or at least give it a test drive, contact the folks at Tarmika. So we try to keep everyone involved as much as possible.
So I think there's going to be new roles in commercial lines underwriting, right? And I agree with you, Bobby. I think the pure underwriters, let's call them, are going to be more portfolio managers. And I do think there could be fewer individuals in those roles, but they're going to have more of an elevated role. But I think both of you kept emphasizing data and getting it back to data and the insights and how they can drive. So I think there have been some new roles around, how to really, leverage data and what new data sources to look and how to build the models and how to do analytics. And they'll be working hand in glove with the ones that are the more senior underwriters.
I agree. And, one other thought that comes to mind as we're having this discussion is, we talk a lot about this digitization of small commercial, but really we're digitizing the risks that are easier to underwrite. And I do think, right now we're kind of drawing a line in the sand of whatever that revenue is or whatever that premium is, but there's going to be some large risks that are going to be able to flow through some of these platforms in the short term, right? That are just not that complex to underwrite, where there's third-party data that is readily available. And those could be true middle market risks today, but we won't need an underwriter to touch those, right? There'll be more complexity on other risks that underwriters will have to get involved with.
Great. Okay, Kevin, any other questions?
Yeah, I got another one here. Mark, I think you mentioned earlier about how a lot of carriers and others in the insurance industry are going through the digital transformation, or at least have a plan to go through the digital transformation. And so the question then would be, are you seeing the innovation being driven by perspectives and experience outside of the industry, or are those digital transformation plans and strategies being really driven by the people inside?
I think it's both. I think maybe in earlier days there was a lot of talk about, well, what are other industries doing? But there's so much energy around innovation over the last several years, right? In the industry, there's a lot of experience and expertise that's been built up amongst the industry. I mean, Grange is a great example. You guys have been at it for quite a while and worked through different innovation models and structures, and have done lots of different kinds of things, and a lot of carriers have done that. So I think there's some hiring from individuals outside the industry, which is a natural and healthy thing to do, to bring in some other perspectives. But I think at this point, a lot of the impetus is coming from within the industry. Do you guys agree?
I agree, especially when it comes to independent agency channel innovation, right? There's not a lot of people outside of our industry that actually understand how that channel works and all the different flavors of independent agents that exist. I will say, like, internally at Grange, our digital team that focuses on policyholder experience is actually from outside the industry. So they came from, retail, other places where they are bringing in a different perspective to kind of like, let's flip over this model and think about this completely differently, because this is what consumers are expecting in retail, to try to bring and pull the insurance policyholder experience along.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, even in the insurtech world, it's kind of that quasi line into some of the fintech stuff, and we're seeing some impact on that start to come into the insurtech world, and it's great. It's a different perspective, even from the technology side or even from an administrative side. It's definitely added a value to it. And even one of the companies I was at, very similar to what Bobby just mentioned. Going after retail class codes, taking in people from the retail space and using their expertise to how they would market to that type of clientele. It's massive. And that's the great thing about insurance too, is you don't have to grow up in the business to really find your footing in it. It wasn't my first choice, but I've had a great 16 years in it. And it's great to see where people are coming from different areas. Even on the agency side, we're starting to see more people from outside insurance join an independent agent for data purposes or marketing. So it's great to see how kind of it all aligns into one.
Well, this has been a great discussion today. Bobby, Chris, I really appreciate it. Michael, Kevin, I appreciate your hosting and support of the event. And I think at this time, I'll just turn back to Kevin to close it out.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.